Hello and welcome to another episode of Fintech Focus TV with me, Toby. And today I've been very, very excited about this one. I'm delighted to welcome all the way from Chicago. It's Thomas Kim from Enfusion. Thomas, how are you?
I'm well, thank you. And yourself?
Very good indeed. Thanks. Very good indeed. Listen, wonderful to speak to you. Thanks so much for coming on the show. I've got so much to ask you, and there's a load that I'm excited about because it's been a stellar year for you, and I feel like I'm going to learn a lot from this one. But I want to kick off with you just telling us a little bit about Enfusion, the story so far, and a bit about your background, if you will. So, show's yours.
Sure. So a little bit about my background. I've been with Enfusion for about a year. I took the helm right when the world shut down, and so it's been an interesting onboarding process. But we have an amazing community, and they've really made everything so simple and easy for me to step in, and so I'm really grateful for that. Prior to Enfusion, listen, I've been in the buy side, sell side, fintech community for a long time, having been involved with, some of the industry first. It's been really rewarding. I spent about 7 years prior to taking this seat at Bridgewater for, in a number of roles, ending in with being the chief operating officer for the investment engine. Great organization, great people. What an amazing opportunity it was to partake in that. Prior to that, I've been, CEO of UNX. I was at Lehman Brothers all the way to its collapse, where we helped build out the Lehman franchise through, in many ways, the acquisition of Townsend Analytics in Chicago. That became, a wonderful firm offering great execution management services capabilities in a broker neutral way. And I've been, the COO of Trading Screen and other fintech firms before. Really, they were called this fancy thing. And so it's been an interesting journey. And really what we're trying to do with Enfusion is think of it like delivering an operational framework for the investment management community. Giving them the ability to have technology help them solve their deepest problems across the order management system, the execution management system, the portfolio management system, as well as front, middle, back office outsourced services. And we've really done a remarkable job, by offering all of this in a cloud native way. And as a service. And so being able to reduce the footprint and make it easy, simplify, unify, and reduce all of the friction that the investment management community has been plagued with for decades. We're really in the forefront of being able to help solve for a lot of these problems, and we're super humbled to be able to do so. So I said
I love
mouthful.
that. I love the the friction reduction, because that's a theme which I keep on hearing about at the moment, particularly in that sort of buy side world. And you touched on the sort of cloud native way, and cloud has naturally been a sort of theme of the show for the last for the last year, and it's been something which people are talking about. But again, in riddles at many sort of stages, and I think this is really exciting. I've been thinking cloud's going to have its major breakthrough in financial services for probably about 15 years. This year and obviously it's been evolving throughout that sort of time, but this year it's really gripped, hasn't it? And we see the sort of cloud story really taking on a new meaning. Cloud native is a terminology you've used there, versus traditional cloud as it's put out there. Give us a bit of a foresight and education around that as well.
It's important, right? Because, I mean, if you think on it, our industry oftentimes takes the shiny object thing that folks are most excited about, whatever that is, and talk about it in very generalities that almost takes away from the value and the meaning behind it. It's almost like talking about something that you don't really quite understand, and the dilution that takes place over time as a result of talking about it in a manner that it can be bastardized, right? What do I mean by that? there is a sea of difference between cloud native and cloud migrated or cloud based, right? Um, think of it like building something specifically for the cloud that is relevant and you get all the benefits, and we can talk about what that is, and taking something that is legacy and simply migrating it onto the cloud, right? Inherently, behind those two very simple things, they both have the word cloud in it, but the benefit that accrues to folks who want to use it are massively different from each other, right?
Mm.
Cloud native, when built for that purpose, is designed for resilience, for rapid change, for scalability, for multi-tenancy, for the ability to push out innovations, not on a quarterly, biannually, yearly basis, but on the fly when necessary. Like we today, being cloud native, we're able to inject innovation into our clients on a weekly basis.
Mm.
Think about that. On
Mm.
a weekly basis, clients don't have to worry about this pain. You've been on the buy side where where upgrading from systems from one version to another is a massive undertaking of testing and resources and iron, right? Hardware that needs to be upgraded as a result of these changes that have been made. None of that,
Mm.
right? Implementation times on a cloud native is dramatically reduced because the footprint is reduced, right? And so cloud native, when you really get down to brass tacks, is largely about pushing all of these benefits to folks who utilize it, massively different from
Mm.
someone who has taken a system that was designed decades ago to be on a heavy installation on a server, then how that thing moved to a desktop, to that moved to a data center, which
Mm.
then got wrapped around this notion of an ASP, right? To then it wasn't, now the shiny object is, the cloud. So taking that from that and just popping it onto an Azure or an Amazon Web Services, it doesn't make you, cloud. It just means you put it on the cloud. And all of the legacy problems that this technology debt accrues, it follows. It doesn't really change anything. You just really just moved it onto a cloud. And
Mm.
and it takes someone to know the differences, and it's oftentimes, I think, important for the industry to just settle and think about those things, and folks like us, I think, are trying to help educate the community at large on the differences, because I think the differences matter. And now, once you understand that, then you can talk about the friction, right? You can talk about the history of what got us here, thinking about what the best of breed. You remember that? I mean, some decades ago, it was all about, hey, we have to pull together the best of breed solution,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? And the best of breed solutions was literally about Frankensteining different systems and things together to
Absolutely.
fulfill, right? And to fulfill and create a capability that was lacking. Well, you fast forward it to today, the remarkable thing is that all of those capabilities are now the minimum standard. And so no one is thinking about the capabilities from the perspective of, I just need that. But the second and third order consequences of building that created this fragmented way of creating infrastructure that now today is untenable. It's a problem, right?
Mm.
It's a problem from a workflow perspective, and it's really a problem for data,
Mm. Mm.
right? Because now when workflows require data to traverse from one system to another, to another, to another, and so forth, the leakage that happens on the data and the normalizing that you have to do from system to system, and the rebuilding of it so that you can extract the data to then use the data to inform investment decisions is extremely cumbersome and expensive, right?
Yeah.
Now, cloud, at least ours, in the way that we've built our framework and our solutions within it, reduces all of that, eliminates all of that at its core. It it no longer has a Frankenstein approach. We built all of these components woven together to be operable on the cloud for the cloud. And it reduces all of the friction, and it produces a single source of truth on the data that is extremely easy to navigate through because it hasn't gone through the impurities of traversing from system to system. It's been solid from the start. And so in many ways, I'm using a lot of words, but it's really a simple story just around, a cloud native offering, solutions delivered as a service or software as a service, and for the purposes of offering our clients a framework for simplifying workflows and unifying the data to make their lives simpler and easier. It's really as simple as that.
And more cost effective, I think, is to throw that into it as well. And I find this fascinating because it's I remember probably 4 or 5 years ago I was asked to speak at a collection of probably 25, 30 hedge fund CTOs, and they were the whole idea of the person who put it together was to try and sort of showcase some of the innovation in technology on the buy side at that sort of stage. And then you had to search really, really hard. And he used me to sort of bring in various different companies who I knew of. And it wasn't easy. At that sort of stage, we weren't talking about a massively innovative area. And that's only 5 years ago, six an absolute max. And so you sat there and there were some very innovative companies around BuySide Technology who were there and speaking, but they weren't getting any sort of traction. They were very, very early on in their sort of growth phase at that sort of stage, and they've gone on to become, some of the sort of really standouts in that sort of space. But it sort of lit a fuse at that sort of stage to say, right, we're lagging in the BuySide tech space at that sort of time. I think it's probably where insurance is now, but that's a whole other story in terms of where that goes. We've seen that sort of development, and if we look at the old OMS systems, the legacy OMS systems that were there and going through that, it would probably switch year on year about which one was in the lead at what sort of stage, and people would have their golden sort of runs at that sort of time. We're seeing, and I know you're saying there the sort of Frankenstein's monster of badging things together. One of the things I'm really interested in is how much more collaborative and collaboration seems to be part of the tech suite, and how much easier that through APIs, etc., that people are able to fuse systems together, but to improve that efficiency, to improve that speed, to really work with the customer and have things that are more bespoke to the individual customer at this sort of stage. And it seems like you're putting all of that sort of learning and lesson together to bring genuine innovation. So probably about 15 questions that I'm throwing to you all at the same sort of time in that, which I apologize for. But I guess the main thing which I'm looking to do is saying why now and why that innovation, and how's that sort of developed over the last couple of years?
It's because, it's logical, right? It's if we use the same history as an example, it's just untenable. And so now is the time where, with a global pandemic that's put a spotlight on what disruption looks like. It really comes down to what was the catalyst that pushes and drives. Well, it was already happening, right? But it was happening at a particular pace. What the global pandemic has done, and as horrible as that is been to humanity, what it's doing on technology is it's very narrowly trying to solve for, I as a buy side, or anyone for that matter in the business, I can't have this kind of disruption in our business going forward. I don't know how long this global pandemic is going to last. I don't know, whether this is, with the vaccines coming available that, I don't know what the new normal is. I don't know, whether there'll be more global pandemics in the future, right? If we look at Asia as an example, they've been undergoing pandemics and disruption that is more than just a day, a week, a month. That, now we're in the realm of like, how do we solve for disruption in the months or the
Mm.
year, right? And that's profound, right? And so it starts off with that, and then it branches out into, wow, I didn't know it could do all that, right? And then you overlay that into, well, legacy technology, you know, it's just, they're just naturally less open, right? And so then you like put all this stuff in a bag, and you mix it all up, and what do you have? Well, you now have an untenable situation when it comes to fragmented systems. You have global macro issues happening all at the same time, and then you have businesses who have to do the responsible thing, which is prepare and be ready and be able to fulfill their goals, right? So for us, it's largely about, again, going back to basics and offering a framework that is designed to be open to solve problems, whether it's APIs, whether it's, more front to back solutions integrated into the thing. We don't, I mean, for our purposes, you can take, a component, an OMS or the EMS or the PMS, and use someone else's, but at least we act as the framework that gives the buy side the optionality to evolve and simplify through time for those folks who need more time to get there, right? It's still a little bit of a Frankenstein, but at least the core, which is our core, is cloud native, and the openness of the API isn't again the same thing. It's like you can just get this far, right?
Mm.
But still call it an API. You can go use our API to get to our core, to be
Yeah.
able to then, make your infrastructure that much better. And then, again, it's a journey, right? And so we are seeing a greater number of folks at, adopting the front to back and trying to simplify. But we also recognize that, large traditional asset managers, it takes them, I mean, it's complicated. They have a lot of tech debt that they would have to unwind in order to get there. But at least we provide the seed that allows them to basically achieve this simplification through time. And we work with them as strategic partners to basically go do that. You have to do it that way. You have to
Mm.
have the technology that's capable, and the partnership, and the IP to basically come to the table and say, hey, if this is really what you're trying to achieve in terms of the simplification, this is how you would do it. And that partnership, I think, is really important, so that it's not, CTOs, COOs, CFOs just kind of trying to figure it out for themselves. We can bring to bear hundreds of clients that are utilizing our framework and the lessons learned there to actually help them inform how they should step through the simplification, if that
That's
makes
so
sense.
important. It completely does, and I think it's fascinating to think of that. That professional services element to it is so often the unraveling of businesses in that sort of space. I think back to, again, probably 10, 15 years ago, and the OMS race at that sort of stage was sort of characterized by businesses that were very, very successful in selling, and then probably overselling, and then having problems to, in the ability to actually fulfill the requirements of it at that sort of stage. And it's very quick to be able to lose trust at that sort of phase, which then built up to a very, very expensive secondary contractor market, which had all of the skills then go off to there to be able to implement it and move on. And the cost of sale just became, or cost of use just became so, so massive, plus the cumbersome nature of it, plus everything that you've just mentioned. And this to me seems like a seismic shift in terms of its ability to be used, and its functionality for the end user. And one of the things that I've really noticed over the last couple of years is the companies who have absolutely, and this is, coming back to common sense. I mean, it's absolutely screams of common sense. The companies that are allowing those businesses to make it as simply as possible to engage with them, to use them, and to get maximum benefit from their product seem to be the ones that are winning, right?
That's right. And it's not about, and here's the thing, I mean, if you think about it, it's not about an OMS or an
Mm,
EMS or a PMS. It's no longer that narrow, individual discussion on a widget, right?
mm,
Because it's all, I mean, it's not about the widget. It's about the deeper business problem, which is I need to be able to, as a buy side firm, establish my strategies based on my understanding of the world, and then to, based on that understanding, create my strategies that shift, from day to day, hour to hour, whatever, right? And how do I push down those shifts now to a business that now needs to function and operate? Well, when you think of it that way, which I think more buy side firms are, large and small, whether you're a traditional asset manager or pension fund or an insurance company, or hedge funds, they're all thinking about this in this way. And they're no longer thinking about it like, well, what does my order management system need to do? What does my EMS need to do? It's broken when thinking about it that way. It's
mm.
more like, what does my business need to achieve, and what frameworks do I need to have in order to achieve those goals? And so we oftentimes start there, and we try not to have a conversation about one particular element that we're strong in, right? And if we were to have that conversation in that way, we would likely win, but it's the wrong conversation at the wrong level.
Yeah.
Um, and so we try to start there, and we try to help our constituents, how they can best achieve their broadest business goals and solve their biggest business issues, is really what it comes down to.
Yeah, yeah, it's brilliant, and it seems to be working for you. And I'm going to embarrass you now, by talking through this, because look, it's I know the company's been running before your time, but it's sort of coincided with a record year on arrival. So I'm not saying that that's all you're doing by any stretch of the imagination, but congratulations on that. I think it's over 136 hedge funds and asset managers who you guys are working with at the moment, and expanded by over 174 hires over the course of this year, which is extraordinary, right? To see that of a
Yeah.
company of that sort of size growing by that sort of rate, that's quite a year, in any year, but to do it over the year that we've had, is pretty special. Tell us a little bit about why that's happened, and how it's happened.
Yeah, and so we've got, so I think the number is like we have over 550 plus clients across the world.
Yeah. So sorry. Yeah,
Um,
those 136 are what's been onboarded this year, right? So,
that's just
yeah,
this
yeah,
year alone. That's
yeah, yeah.
all this year alone. And and we had, so we even beat last year's number, which was roughly close to that as well. And so we're just growing. I mean, I think the reality is that people are getting, they're getting the value, both in the story of what it is that we can help them with, and the relevance of the real technology and the framework behind it. And so with that comes, amazing growth with wonderful client partners, and the growing of our Enfusion community, which I think is thriving. And so we have, I think by the end of the year, we'll have about 500 people in our global campus. We hired around 174-ish this year. We're going to continue to hire, to support the business growth that we're seeing, to basically focus on delivering against two core goals. One is deliver excellent products and services, to investment managers across the front office, and the front, middle, and back office outsourcing, and then deliver differentiating client experience. Everyone talks about it, but it's more of a tagline than a reality. And so we have restructured the entire company, transformed it in many ways from an operating perspective to focus on delivering that client experience that is more than just, having individuals available to pick up the telephone call when there are problems, right? And narrowly answer those questions, but more proactively understanding our clients' problems and partnering with them and advocating with them, the things that we can help them do, ideally in advance of issues that arise. But at the same time, when issues arrive, we have those capabilities as well. But it's been growing, and we're extremely humbled by the growth, and we expect it to continue across the
Tell
world.
me about that. Tell me about that, CX. Sorry to cut across, because I think it's a really interesting sort of area. And you're right. People do talk about great customer service all the time, and it's it's a necessary on every deck and every business plan and everything that you look at for a 3-year strategy about making sure we've got customer first mentalities. Sounds like you've actually sort of looked at that and taken it more seriously and actually implemented it and far from a buzzword, it's a sort of culture. And I'm
Yes.
fascinated in this because I've been studying all year some of my favorite brands out there, full stop. And I think, sort of, if you look at the sort of massive growth of companies like Salesforce, like Netflix, like Amazon, and similar, Apple, you're looking at companies there who've really sort of dominated that customer experience in their lanes. They've made it easy, so easy for companies to work with them, and they've created experiences that get real advocacy and raving fans, for want of a better expression, around what they're doing. That seems to have been something which is commonplace again in your thinking. Tell me a little bit about what customer experience really means over at Enfusion at the moment.
Yeah, I mean, the stakes are super high. I mean, you're talking about a mission critical framework and capabilities that fuel our clients' abilities to perform their duties as investment managers, right? And so it's very high touch. It has to be high touch. And so we start there and recognize the responsibility that these asset managers are bestowing on us to basically deliver to them consistency, innovation, and quite frankly, fit for purpose capabilities that they can rely on every single day. That's a huge responsibility, right? And that's not one that we take very lightly. So it starts there. And so we take from the point of sale, from the point of the start of the partnership through to the onboarding, right? Managing expectation and ensuring that we're actually delivering what they say, through to the customer advocacy through their account managers that are divorced from revenue, that are solely focused on understanding their clients and advocating for them every single day, through centers of excellence underneath that, where we have really teams across the world who are specialized at being experts in the areas that they are responsible for, and then wrapping all that up in a global delivery service capability and pushing out in a proactive way that experience to our clients, where it's much more systematic, proactive, and even in some level scientific, at the level that we're analyzing the data around just health, the health of the clients, in terms of the ins and outs of using the software, so that we can deliver the kinds of services in a much more proactive way that's going to help them work through their issues. And so we've invested heavily in this. We'll continue to invest heavily in this. All of that life cycle of start of the partnership to steady state is extremely important to us. And we believe that that's the center stone of what our success will be, and will continue to be. And so, we just want to make sure that we're doing justice by the client by reciprocating in kind for the responsibility of agreeing to work with us, that we do our part and deliver the kind of service and products that matter to them.
Yeah, absolutely. No, and I can see exactly why that's fueled the sort of success. It's forward thinking in terms of what's happened over the last 12 months, and what a 12 months for you to arrive in. I mean, what a challenge to unprecedented challenge to sort of turn up in a job and then be thrown with this. How did you deal with that? How did you no one's had the experience to be able to deal with that. You're finding your feet in a company. Your whole global workforce is then spread out, and you are it's a global team, right? So we're looking here at relationships which can't be forged as easily without being on a plane and introducing yourself to people in person, etc., etc. Tell me about some of the challenges that you faced and how you've dealt with that over the course of the last 12 months in particular.
Wow. I mean, so none of us would have been able to predict this. I lost, a fair amount of sleep before taking the seat and landing as, the CEO, because everything had shut down literally on the day that I started. And I will tell you that the success is not mine. It's really because of the community. Um, our Enfusion community just made it easy, easier, right? They're first of all, you're right. They're located across the world, but the sense of values and principles that stand behind and lift and keep the community strong was just, they have a very high expectation and standards of what it is that we do, and that in many ways made things a lot easier. But that said, in the new normal, I had to do different things. And so where you would normally have maybe one or two town halls a year, we've probably had, one every month or one in, every couple of weeks, whether they're full-fledged town halls for the companies or for the company or smaller ones geographically or, by, I mean, we're doing this. We're now living in a world where in order to make sure that there is syncness of everyone and that they're all trying to achieve similar goals together where everything is gelling, you have to do more, even if it's virtual. And so that was different, and we pivoted hard on that very quickly. We've also realized that mental health, mental well-being is very challenged at a time where everyone's locked down, right? And so whether you have a family or you're a millennial and you're living in a small, studio and aren't able to get out, we found that we have to do more to try and make sure that the stability and the well-being of members of the community was good and strong. And so that was also very different. Technically, because we're cloud native, it's been business as usual for us, and that's been a blessing. But everything has been largely focused on internally in making sure that our people are good, and that their families are well, and that there is much more virtual touch points to just make sure that individuals who may be home alone have this, at least some connection with their peers and the community. So we strongly promote people use their cameras. We strongly promote that people reach out to each other as if they were in the office and swing by their desk and just checking up and seeing how they're doing. And so that's been very important in just trying to get people in a good headspace.
I think there's this is a pet subject of mine and one I'm fascinated with, and I know your team were shortlisted and have been spoken to about the Ultimate FinTech Workplace Awards that we're running at the moment in our Financial Technologist magazine. And I was speaking to the member of our team who interviewed yours, and it was, I've never, someone was genuinely excited about the sort of work that you guys were doing to create a great workplace. And as I say, look, it goes across the globe for you. What were you seeing in different areas, and were you having to have different routines and different stories for different people? You talk about town halls. The global side, I have an office in London, an office in New York, and it's very different sort of stories for both the people who are in them and the phases of lockdown. I mean, we're back in the UK, we are locked down again. In New York, it's opened up a little bit, and I'm finding it really fascinating to see the different ways that you have to, there's no one size fits all at the moment. Are you finding the same thing, and how have you dealt with that?
Absolutely. And so take Asia, for example. We have an office in Hong Kong and Singapore, and they were the first to go on lockdown, and they're the first to start going back to the office. And so the conversations there are more around safety, because the well-being, again, of our community is the most important thing. And so what we found is, generally speaking, the commonality across across all the regions is that people actually want to go back to the office. They
Mm,
want that interaction. It's just a question of, can they do so safely? And
mm,
so the conversation in APAC has largely been around, okay, how do we do it safely? In EMEA, London and Dublin, it's been a different story, because I mean, you see it. There's a tremendous amount of angst
mm,
around how to go about, operating, and I think no one is thinking about going back to the office yet. They're
mm,
shutting things back down again. And then to a certain degree, then you have the Americas, which is somewhat similar. They've been on lockdown for a while, and in different forms. And so it's everything has been centered around safety, and about the individual dispositions of what they're most worried about. But again, the commonality is that we'd like to go back to the office, we just don't know how. And they're dealing with sort of their individual dispositions, or the cities or the countries that they live in, to figure out, how all these things come together. But now I think the conversation has pivoted into, what does it mean to have a vaccine?
mm.
Will we be mandated to take them? Should we wait until there's a little bit of a track record of what it looks like, after people have started taking them? What are the real side effects? Are people telling the truth? They're worried, right? And rightfully so. And so what I promised the community is that we would step through this in an evidence-based way, listening to the recommendations of the CDC and the WHO, and the local cities and states, and that we would step through this together safely, is really all I can really say,
Yeah.
until we learn more. But the goal is to try and get folks back to the office as quickly and as safely as we can. We're just figuring out what that looks like. No
And do you
different
see
than I
that?
think what you're going.
Absolutely. And do you see that as a full-time thing, or do you see a hybrid model? I mean, this whole work from home thing has got, various different models about what it can look like moving further forward. And as you say, there's people who fall in love with it, and there's people who are desperate to leave it behind. What do you
Yeah.
do as a business for that when you're looking at your community and listening to all of them?
Yeah, so we're not the type of, so let me say it differently, which is, I believe flexibility is in the core, right? And dealing with individual cases of what folks are dealing with, post vaccines and what have you. I think there's a tail, right? The world has changed, and the world is still changing, and it's still trying to cope with all this. I don't think it's going to be I wish it were, but I don't think it's like magically there are vaccines and everything goes back to normal. I think, I think there's a tale of who gets vaccinated, how that happens through time, when does it become available. The world needs to figure all these things out. And until it does, any responsible CEO for a company would step through it thoughtfully, with flexibility, understanding where people's angsts are, right?
Yeah.
If your community or your people are truly your greatest asset, then CEOs have a responsibility to make sure that we caretake, and be stewards of those, members of the community that are so important. And so for us, we're just going to step through it carefully, and whether that is more remote or not, we'll deal with that as we step through it, and we'll deal with it based on what our community requires. But the cornerstone will be, we'll step through it with great flexibility and care.
Yeah. I think that's a great way of putting it. And no surprise to say that it's growing, and that retention will be good with that growth. I'm sure at the same sort of stage, and hitting the right notes as a business. Thomas, I feel like there's about another 4 hours I could be talking to you about all of this sort of stuff, and remarkably time has gone through incredibly quickly as we've been speaking. But look, I think it's an amazing business that you're creating over there, and the whole team seems to be doing an incredible job. And it's a business that we hear rhetoric about all the time, more and more so over the last few years, and I think that's great. I think it's in a fascinating space. at a time of great innovation, and you guys are right at the forefront of it. So congratulations, and keep it going. People I know will be hearing it and keen to hear a little bit more about it as well. What's the best way to get in touch with you guys and find out a bit more?
You can reach out to or look at our website, www.enfusion.com. There's lots of ways through that to access our sales organization. And so that's a great place to start. And we're eager to work with folks.
Fantastic. Well, listen, thanks so much for being so generous and sharing it. I'm desperate to get you back on the show and move into more things, because I feel like there's so much that we can all learn from just listening to that sort of story. So it's been wonderful speaking to you. Thanks so much for going into it in so much detail and sharing your time so generously today as well. Really enjoyed it.
Thank you so much for having me and for listening to our story.
An absolute pleasure. Thank you all for listening as well. We hope you enjoyed it, and we'll see you soon on another episode of Fintech Focus TV. Thanks a lot. Cheers.